in today's day and time, it is so difficult to make the right choices, especially when it comes to what you eat, and then even more difficult to feed your kids right, especially with the picky one. So if you're a parent who has a picky eater and you're having a really tough time getting your kids to eat the right things, I understand. We're all in this together. But today I will talk about different things to consider when you're trying to get your kids to eat, and simple practical tips on how you can start getting from that side of picky eating to including variety for your kids and creating those healthy relationships with food that is the foundation to all of this. If this is your first time watching, I am Dr. Lum Frundi. Thank you for joining me. I'm passionate about helping parents create sustainable, healthy habits for their kids so they can raise healthy, thriving kids. Like I talked about, it's overwhelming and really difficult to create healthy habits. So get your picky eaters to eat healthy in this day and time. And rightfully so, because there's a lot of information out there and a lot of ads targeted especially at the kids, where we're expecting these kids to make right choices when they're filled with all those images and ads about cereals and the yogurts and the fruit punches and all of those things, where as much as you try to guard and protect your kids, they could be watching a movie and bam, the ad shows up about something healthy there, or some restaurant or some food that looks colorful, flavorful, playful, and promise a whole lot of things with their favorite cartoon characters, mind you. So we're expecting these kids to see all of this information out there and then choose a veggie, right? So the kids are in there too. So once we have that perspective that we are all being exposed to a lot of information, and then our job becomes easier, because then we can adequately figure out how to now start filtering what's in front of our kids' view. All the time we were limiting and reducing those fights when it comes to foods, and helping our kids then build healthy relationships with food, because ultimately that's the foundation to provide your kids the tools to really thrive when it comes to making healthy food decision. And why is this so important? Because most of those foods that are advertised, most of the ultra processed foods that are available, most of the easy food options that they will put out there, like for a busy mom, quick and easy packs, just pick and go, grab and go and stuff, they're ultra processed, and they're high in sugars, they're high in emulsifiers that go in there to mess up the gut microbiome, cause a lot of inflammation that really leads long-term to either irritable bowel syndromes, or frequent abdominal pains, constipation. We're seeing a lot of kids with that. And all the list goes on immediately. And then long-term now we start seeing a lot of obesity or diabetes, high blood pressure and stuff like that. Because ultimately, disease does not really start at the time of diagnosis. It starts long before those symptoms start showing up. It's our job then to start stopping that process before we get to the point where we are now seeing the symptoms and hence the diagnosis. Because that could be deceptive, where you're like, okay, because I feel okay, I'm not having the symptoms right now, does not mean that that process has not started. And it could take years to get to a point where we're seeing it. Now, so what can you then do with this information? I say you start out, because as number one, you are that gatekeeper over your household. So the first thing to do now is then to be that filter, where we're filtering what we bring into the house for our kids to eat. Once we start out filtering that and bringing in only the foods that we would want them to eat, it takes some of that fight out. When it's not a point where they're fighting because they want that muffin all day long every day because they see it. But the muffin is no longer there for you to fight back and forth with them. Or if you decide you want to make your breakfast pancakes in place of that, then you have the option where you can say a pancake versus a fruit or a vegetable. Within those choices that you're now presenting, you're okay with whichever choice they make. So you be that guard, you be that filter, where we're now filtering what we're bringing into the house, and we're filtering what they have access to, and we're now allowing them to make that choice as far as which food option they will take in. Because a second part of the battle with picky eating or eating with kids is that they want to be independent. They want to be in that place where they're able to choose for themselves. So we provide the stuff and then they choose which one they'll eat. But once we start granting access only to those things that we want them to eat, then that fight of choosing is no longer there, because then whatever choice they make is fair game because we brought it into the house. The second step is that once you bring it into the house, you want to make sure those choices you want them to make are easily accessible. You want to make sure that the fruits are there everywhere. If you walk into the kitchen, you have those places where you can store the fruits at eye level, or the vegetables in the refrigerator at eye level, where if your kid should open your refrigerator, even if they're bored, like, I'm bored, I want to eat, the first thing they see there is just, it's a carrot or a celery stick or cucumber stick, where those are the options that you can pick from to eat, so that they are becoming familiar now with these foods that we want them to eat, because everywhere you turn, you see them. Remember, we're combating and we're filtering out all the other junk foods that once they step out of there, when you walk into any grocery store or you walk anywhere, once you step out of there, they have access, or they see all those things. And in the stores too, they have those things at eye levels, and eye level, that kids' eye levels, where that's what they see. So we want to bring that same concept into the house and reframe that whole picture, where in the house, what we become familiar with, in the house, what we have access to are those healthy options that you can easily choose for. I can reach for a banana on the kitchen counter. I have sliced apples where they're easy to reach and grab and bite without me having to struggle with biting it or cutting it and stuff like that. So make it where it's easy, it's accessible, and you become familiar with it. This is how we eat at home. This is how my family eats. This is what's familiar. Once it becomes familiar, and then the choice is easy, where we eat what we're familiar. We do the things we're most comfortable with over those things that are more familiar. Now, the next step is that now we can start making simple swaps from the things that we're trying to change. So again, we're taking one step at a time, right? So if you're a family of kids who just love rice or they love pasta and stuff, we start out with what they like and switch it for the healthier option of it. So we start out from the white, highly processed to brown rice or whole grain pasta and stuff like that. So simple swaps where we're maintaining that recipe, but we're changing from white to brown, and everything else remains the same. Because once you go so drastic that the sight is different, the taste is different, the smell is different, and then that falls apart because those kids can sniff it, I'm not eating it, you change your stuff and things like that. But once you start up with simple swaps like that, it becomes like, okay, now this is how we eat. We eat brown rice at home. After a while, they settle down. Well, this is how we eat. We eat brown rice at home. Next step is, if you still have those kids who like the rice and the pasta, you start out making your own pasta sauce. Because pasta sauce, you have tomato, you can use plain tomato sauce, no added sugars or salts in it and stuff. And you add your own herbs and spices in there. You can add your gingers and garlic and onions and all of those herbs that go to help nourish your gut microbiome. But you know what you're adding into that tomato base versus the already pre-made that has a lot of things in there, including sugars and emulsifiers. So now we're taking it a step further to create or make our own pasta sauce. And you can add so much in there, but again, one step at a time, where now you're taking that kid who was eating just highly processed everything, and we're slowly but surely changing it and adding components to it that will help to heal that gut microbiome. And you can go as far as even adding mixed veggies and making stir-fried rice with chopped carrots and peas in the rice, which I did that for my kid for a while. For a long time, she made me pick those carrots and peas out. But guess what? Eventually, after time, she became familiar with carrots and peas in her rice, where it's just how we eat, and that's how we make our rice, and she starts eating it, but because she became familiar with it. So it may take a while. The goal is that we're looking at long term, and the goal is that we're looking at making long-term changes over time, where we're not stopping what we're doing based on feedback that oh, we don't like this, because any little change may be uncomfortable immediately, but when you do it long enough, you become comfortable with that change, and then you can take a step further and a step further, where we're taking that one step at a time process, slowly taking them along that journey of making healthier choices and building the healthier relationships with food. So start small, take it slow, one step at a time, and then finally knowing again that it is long term. It's not about a quick fix. It's not about this is what I like, that is what I don't like, because granted, everything is changeable. It just takes time. And as long as we're consistent with those changes, as long as we're not going back to what we're doing because of that feedback that I don't like it, but we're going to start changing the eating culture in our household, where we're only having those foods we want them to eat. We're allowing them to make those choices, and we're bringing them along where we're eating together as a family. Once they become familiar, they see you eating it, with time, they will start eating the way you eat, because ultimately we are the models for our kids. They will eventually start eating the way we ate, and we want to make sure that we're building that foundation for them. As always, thank you for listening. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want some more information, I have a workshop to help you and give you more guided resources on how to really take this a step further for you and your family. Thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm Dr. Lum.